Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting. It's this report called the Fintech Gender Gap, a cross-country perspective. Basically, it's all about how, fintech is supposed to be this big equalizer, bringing financial services to everyone, but that's not really what's happening.
Yeah, it's a bit of a disconnect, right? You'd think with all this amazing technology we'd be seeing more progress on closing those gaps, but the data tells a different story.
For sure. You ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Data on the screen, numbers come alive. Male, female flows where the patterns thrive. Visual charts, public colors unify. Gender decoded, bringing truth to light. Watch them all drum fill. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide.
Ready to dive into something pretty fascinating today. Fintech, but with a twist.
Yeah, a twist. That's one way to put it. We're looking at the gender gap in fintech.
It's one of those things, right? You hear fintech, you think innovation, breaking barriers, the future of finance.
Right, leveling the playing field.
Exactly. But the research we're diving into today, it paints a bit of a different picture.
Yeah, it does. And we're talking a global picture here, 28 countries.
This isn't just some isolated thing, it's a pattern.
Exactly, a global pattern. So, to kick things off, we've got this research that shows that globally, 29% of men are using fintech.
Okay, 29% of men got it.
But only 21% of women. That's an 8% difference.
An 8% difference. I mean, that's not insignificant.
No, not at all. And what's really striking is how consistent that gap is.
Across all those countries.
Almost all 28, yeah. It makes you wonder, what's going on here?
Is it a tech issue? Is it something else? That's what we're here to figure out. So let's get specific. This study highlights some countries where the gaps are smaller, places like Spain, France, Japan.
Okay, so smaller gaps in those countries. What do they have in common?
Well, they often have really robust social safety nets.
Makes sense, that kind of baseline support.
And policies that promote gender equality, that seems to play a role too.
Yeah, definitely. So a more equitable foundation overall might be a factor.
Definitely. They also tend to have strong data privacy laws.
Interesting. Would that make women feel more secure about using these platforms?
That's the thinking. If you're worried about your data, you might be hesitant to jump into a new system.
Right, especially when it comes to your finances.
Exactly. But then you look at the other end of the spectrum, countries like Brazil, Argentina, Mexico.
Okay, and what's happening in those countries?
Gaps are wider there, almost double the global average.
Wow, almost double.
It seems like cultural norms might be playing a larger role there.
So norms that might limit women's financial decision-making.
And their access to technology in general.
Right, because if you don't have the access, you can't even participate in fintech.
Exactly. So it's like, are these existing social and economic structures kind of holding women back from fully embracing fintech?
Yeah, and it makes you think, even with all the talk about fintech being this great equalizer, it's not that simple.
Not that simple at all. And then you've got these fascinating outliers like South Korea and Singapore.
Tech powerhouses, right.
Exactly. But even there, that gender gap persists.
So maybe it's not just about access to technology.
Seems like there's something deeper at play here, even in the most tech-forward nations.
Okay, so it's more nuanced than just give everyone a smartphone, problem solved.
Way more nuanced. So the question becomes, why does this gap exist in the first place? And luckily, this study really dives into that.
It does. Perfect, because that's what I was hoping we'd get into.
Some of the factors they uncovered, really insightful stuff. Security concerns, for instance.
Security concerns.
Big one. Women tend to be more cautious about data privacy and online security.
Makes sense. It's a big deal.
Especially when it comes to your finances.
Absolutely. So that hesitation might make them less likely to jump into new fintech platforms.
That's the thinking. And the study also found something they called tech aversion. Apparently, women are less likely to adopt any new tech, not just fintech.
Any new tech. That's interesting. I wonder, is it because the tech itself seems complicated? Or maybe a lack of trust in these new companies? or even just how these products are being marketed.
Yeah, all valid questions. We have to consider if the tech world is sending signals, even unintentionally, that make women feel less welcome.
Less welcome, yeah. I mean, think about how much tech marketing still feels kind of, I don't know, geared towards men.
For sure. It's like they're missing out on a huge potential market.
Huge. But okay, security concerns, tech aversion, that's two big factors. What else did the research find?
This was fascinating. They found a difference in how men and women approach financial decisions.
A difference in their approach. Okay, I'm curious.
Men, seems, are more drawn to the lower costs that a lot of fintech companies advertise. They see those savings and jump right in.
So a more straightforward cost-benefit analysis.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Whereas women, they tend to prioritize finding services that truly fit their needs, even if it costs a little more.
Which makes sense, right? Especially if you're thinking about women often managing household budgets, juggling different priorities.
Exactly. It's not just about cheap. It's got to be right for their specific situation.
So for them, it's less about chasing the lowest price and more about finding what actually works for their lives.
Suitability and peace of mind, that's the key.
Makes sense. But then, of course, there's that big elephant in the room when we talk about gender gaps.
Cultural norms, yeah, can't ignore those.
Unfortunately not, even in households where things seem pretty equal on the surface.
The research suggests that men are often still the ones making those big financial calls.
So women might be less exposed to fintech in the first place.
It's like a vicious cycle. Less exposure, lower adoption, and those existing power imbalances just get reinforced.
A vicious cycle. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But you know, what I love about these deep dives is that sometimes you get these unexpected insights, things that make you go, wait a minute, I never thought of it that way.
Me too. And this research has a few of those mind-blowing observations.
Lay it on me. What are some of the things that really stood out?
Well, think about this. Developed countries like Germany, the U.S., sophisticated financial systems?
Right, you'd think they'd be ahead of the curve.
You would.
Yeah.
But they still have a significant gender gap when it comes to fintech.
So even in a place like Germany, with all its economic strength, fintech isn't closing that gap.
Nope. It challenges the idea that progress just trickles down to everyone.
Yeah, it's like, hold on, maybe we need to be more intentional about making sure everyone benefits.
A more proactive approach, exactly.
Okay, that's one mind-blowing observation. You mentioned there were a couple, right? What else stood out to you?
This might sound counterintuitive. Despite all the hype around fintech.
Disrupting the industry, changing the world.
Right. But the study found that way fewer people overall are actually using it compared to traditional banks.
That is surprising. You hear so much about fintech, but in reality,
Still a relatively small player compared to those big banks. Trust is a big factor, I think.
people have relationships with their banks. They know what to expect. They're comfortable.
Right, and fintech companies, as innovative as they are, they haven't built up that same level of trust yet.
Plus, there's that whole integration issue. You can't just swap out your bank for a fintech app and expect everything to work seamlessly.
Exactly, it's not a plug-and-play situation. And then, of course, there's that security anxiety, especially for women.
Yeah, if you're already hesitant about a new company, seeing that most people are sticking with their bank might make you think twice.
Makes sense. There's a comfort in numbers. But what's interesting here is that the study hints at something important. It's not about fintech replacing banks.
So not an either situation.
Right, it's about recognizing that both have a role to play.
A more collaborative approach, maybe.
Exactly. Fintech brings the innovation, the agility, the potential to develop cutting-edge solutions.
And banks bring the trust, the infrastructure, the regulatory backing that a lot of people still need
It's like combining the best of both worlds.
to create something even more powerful.
And by working together, they might be able to lower some of those barriers to entry we've been discussing, make financial services more accessible to a wider range of people, including women.
So a win-win situation.
Potentially, yeah. A much more hopeful perspective than that whole fintech is going to destroy the bank's narrative.
Yeah, because it's not about destruction, it's about finding a balance using innovation and stability to make financial empowerment a reality for everyone.
Well said. And you know, one thing that really hit home for me in this research is the global nature of this gender gap.
The fact that it exists pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, regardless of a country's economy, culture, even how tech-savvy its people are.
It really underscores how systemic this issue is.
It's not just a problem in one place, it's a global phenomenon.
Which means solving it will require more than just a few tweaks here and there.
We're talking fundamental changes to how we approach finance, technology, gender roles on a global scale. It's a big challenge, but we're not alone in facing it.
Exactly. If we can find those common threads, those leverage points for change, then maybe we can make a real difference.
That's the hope, right? To move from overwhelm to possibility.
To action, even.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about the challenges, we've talked about the solutions, and we've talked about the importance of individual action.
Yeah.
But I want to end on a note of optimism because I really believe that change is possible.
I agree. There's a lot of momentum building around this issue, and I'm seeing more and more people, both within the fintech industry and outside of it, who are dedicated to making a difference.
And the more we talk about it, the more awareness we raise, and the closer we get to finding real, lasting solutions.
It's about keeping the conversation going, pushing for progress, and never settling for the status quo.
Beautifully said. You know, one thing that's really stuck with me from this deep dive is that closing the fintech gender gap isn't just about fairness or social responsibility. It's about unlocking a massive amount of untapped potential.
That's such an important point. When we empower women financially, we unleash their creativity, their innovation, and their entrepreneurial spirit.
We create a more dynamic, more vibrant, and more prosperous world for everyone.
It's about recognizing that when women thrive, we all thrive.
So to our listener, as you continue your journey through the world of fintech, keep this conversation in mind. Challenge the assumptions, ask the tough questions, and demand better from the companies and institutions that shape our financial lives.
And remember, your voice matters. Your choices matter. You have the power to be a part of the solution.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you're leaving feeling informed, inspired, and ready to make a difference.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep pushing for a more inclusive and equitable future for all.